So SI system units of measurement is an international system. It stands for System International. And we have the measuring systems that are developed by different places. Everyone had different standards of measurement. So in order to make things a standard, the international community decided to use an SI unit or the metric system. Okay, so the standard prefixes for the SI units of measure, they're going to be for powers of 10. So 10 groups of 10 are going to be deca, groups of 10 are hecto, groups of groups of 100 are hecto, groups of 1,000 are kilo, of 6, this should be 10 to the power 6. Okay, groups of million is mega, for billion it's giga, for quadrillion it's tera. Okay, and we see that in terms of our, gigabytes, megabytes with computers. When we get into fractions, okay, 1/10 is going to be a deci, 1/100th is a centi. So for example, a centimeter is 1/100th of a meter, millimeter is 1/1,000,000th, micro is 1/1,000th, micro is 1/1,000,000th, nano is 1/1,000,000,000th, and pico or pico is 1/quadrillionth. Okay, and these are our suffixes, our prefixes for these measurements. So for SI length, so our SI measurement of length, we use meters. For weight, we use grams. For frequency, we use hertz. For energy, we use joules. Okay, sometimes we still use calories a little bit in science. Temperatures, we use Celsius instead of Fahrenheit. So when we talk about naming these, in this case here, we got 2 times 10 to the 6 joules. Okay, so the SI prefix that we're going to add to this, so we go back to this, 10 to the power 6 is mega. So we go to 2 megajoules. Okay, so this means we have 2 million joules. Here we have 3 times 10 to the power -3 meters. That's 1/1000th of a meter. Well, that's one that's familiar to us. It's 3 millimeters. If we have 10 to the 10 hertz, well, there's no 10 to the 10 here. There's 10 to the 9, which is giga, 10 to the 12, which is tera. Well, we need to express this with giga. So we only have 10 to the 9. So we have to rewrite this as 90 times 10 to the 9, and that becomes 90 gigahertz. Okay, and that's the frequency of how we measure frequency. So when we talk about measurement, we still use imperial units. So we need to be able to convert between imperial and metric, okay, or SI. So we need to know what kind of units we're going to use when we're measuring things in miles, yards, feet, inches. So for miles, we're talking about distance between cities. Right? Okay, and in SI, we would use kilometers. Yards, we might be talking about, the distance across the playground, across the schoolyard. Okay, and then the equivalent SI measurement is meters. Okay, and you could come up with your own examples here. I'm sure you can come up with different examples of what you would measure in miles, yards, feet might be distance across a room. Okay, we might be talking the length of a table, the table length. Okay, we might be doing it in feet. With this feet, our equivalent would be either meters, or we might even use centimeters, depending on if we're talking about, distance across the room would be meters, whereas table length, we might want to measure that in centimeters. Okay, so inches, things like the sheet of paper. We would measure in inches, and the equivalent would be centimeters in SI. So when we're converting between these imperial measurements, okay, we have these conversion factors, and we use them in the same way as we would convert any other rates. Okay, we use these conversion rates to change yards to feet to yards. So in this case here, if I have 770 feet, I can use a proportion, but again, we want to try to use this multiplying strategy or unit analysis, or it's also called dimensional analysis. I want to use yards and feet. So here's my, where's yards and feet? Yards and feet are here. Okay, now if I want to get rid of feet, I need to make sure that the feet units are in the divide spot so I can cancel out those units. And then we end up with yards on top. So when we do this calculation, so 770 divided times on top, divide on bottom. Okay, so we end up with 770 divided by 3, and that's going to give me 256.6 repeating yards. So 256, and we can say 2/3, but let's use decimals here. We use 67 yards. Okay, so inches to yards. Okay, so we start with 32 inches. And we don't have a direct inch to yard comparison, but we do have inches to feet and then feet to yards. So I'm going to do it like this. So I want to get rid of my inches, so I'm going to do 12 inches on bottom, so they cancel out, and 1 foot on top. There's my ratio. And then I want to get rid of, so I'm at this point I have a feet, and I want to convert it to yards. So I'm going to use feet, 3 feet on bottom. Okay, so make sure that the units cancel out, and I end up with yards on top. And the yards is the only unit that doesn't cancel, so that's the unit that I end up with. Okay, so when I do this calculation then, I'm going to do 30 times on top, divide on bottom, so it's going to be divide by 12, divide by 3. I'm going to end up with 0.88 repeating, so I'm going to round that to 89 yards. Okay, so 32 inches is just under 1 yard.